I had wrapped the frame in a dish towel because I didn't own bubble wrap and didn't want to buy any for this specific purpose, for this specific night. For a dinner I almost didn't attend. The restaurant was the kind my father liked. Wood paneling, low-light menus without prices on the version they hand women. I'd been here before for other occasions. I always ordered the same thing, and it was always fine, and I always drove home feeling like I'd been present at something without quite being included in it. The photo was from my graduation. The two of us, him with his hand on my shoulder, both of us squinting into the same sun. I'd had it printed and framed at a shop near my office. The woman behind the counter had said, "What a nice picture," and I'd said, "Thank you," and meant it. Standing there, for a moment, believing that it was. I unwrapped it at the table while people were still finding their seats, set it in front of him. He looked at it the way you look at something that arrives slightly out of context. Not the object itself, but the category it represents. Then he said, "You really think this is about you?" Not loudly, not even unkindly exactly, more like a clarification. The way you'd correct a small error in a meeting before moving on. I nodded, once. Because I had in fact thought that. For approximately 32 years I had operated on the assumption that I was, to some degree, a subject in our relationship. Rather than only a setting. I picked up the dish towel. Left the frame where it was. Walked out through the low light and the wood paneling, and the door held open by a teenager who said, "Have a good night," and I said, "Thanks," and meant nothing by it. The air outside was sharp. April pretending it wasn't still winter. I sat in my car without starting it. The dish towel was in my lap. I kept folding and unfolding it along the same crease until my phone rang. My sister's voice was doing the thing it does when she's working hard to sound calm. "Something's wrong with the account," she said. "We can't access it. The advisor says there's some kind of, I don't know, some kind of hold?" I looked at the dish towel. "He said it's not about me," I told her. A silence that had several things moving around inside it. "What does that mean?" "I'm not sure yet," I said, which was partially true. "I'll talk to you tomorrow." I hung up and sat there another few minutes. The restaurant windows were lit amber from inside. I could see shapes moving but not faces. Here is what they didn't know, and what I had never said aloud, in a way that required acknowledgement. For 11 years I had managed the financial architecture of my father's retirement planning. Not as a gift, initially as a favor, then as an assumption, then as simply the way things were. I was the one who spoke to the advisor, who read the documents, who caught the error in 2019 that would have cost them significantly and said nothing about catching it. I held the folder, actual manila, actual paper, worn soft at the corners, held shut with a binder clip that had lost most of its tension and required repositioning every time. Because no one else wanted to hold it. 2 weeks before the dinner, I had called the advisor and restructured my access. Not removed. Restructured. My name remained. My authorization remained. But the day-to-day visibility, the one that had been defaulted to me for over a decade without conversation, or compensation or the word "thank you," spoken in a register that suggested it was meant, that I had quietly redirected. I hadn't planned to explain this at dinner. I hadn't planned to explain it at all. My apartment is on the 4th floor of a building with a slow elevator. I usually take the stairs. That night I took the elevator and watched Ibs and thought about the photograph. Specifically about which direction it was facing now, whether anyone had moved it, whether it was still on the table or had been quietly relocated to somewhere less visible. I made tea I didn't drink. Stood at the window. The city outside was doing its ordinary nighttime things. Indifferent and vast. And I found that comforting in the specific way that indifference can be comforting when you've spent a long time trying to matter to a particular set of people. The folder was on my desk. Binder clip freshly repositioned. I didn't look at it. My mother said my name 4 times before I reached the door, each repetition slightly higher, slightly more frayed at the edges. I knew the progression. I had heard it at various volumes across various decades. I opened the door on the 4th one. She looked smaller than she had at the restaurant. Or maybe it was the hallway light. Or maybe this is just what people look like. When the structure they've been leaning against moves without warning. I didn't say anything. I stepped back from the doorway, not a grand gesture, just a step, and I held the door open, and I waited. She came in. We sat at my kitchen table, the ordinary one, not oak, not inherited, just a table I'd bought flat packed and assembled alone on a Sunday 3 years ago. The tea I hadn't drunk was still on the counter. She started to speak. I let her, and then, because she was my mother and she was tired, and something in her face reminded me of a photograph I'd just left on a table across town. 2 people, the same sun, the same squint. Before everything calcified into what it had become, I reached across and put my hand over hers. Not forgiveness, not yet. Maybe not ever, in the complete way the word implies. But I left it there. The binder clip on the folder was slipping again. I'd fix it in the morning.